I'm losing my voice. I'm sure that won't be sad news for a lot of you, so I'm not going to talk a lot right now. Yeah, so here's the deal. A buddy of mine at work is sort of a fledgling. He's learning to become a blacksmith, and he has forged this knife out of some leaf spring. And he asked me the other day, he's like, "Do you think you could maybe cast an aluminum grip for it? Handle, blade, not blade. I don't know what they call them, but an aluminum grip." And I said, "Well, sure, I can try." So I modeled up this grip. It's a two-part model split that will go essentially like that on the blade, right? I'll show you a better picture in a second, but that's it. Now there are some issues here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a gap right here because his blade is thick right there and there. So I might grind that down just to get it to fit into my pattern a little bit better. We're going to do a split mold, so half will be in the cope, half will be in the drag, and this will stay in the mold when I pour the aluminum, and the aluminum will pour all around this area here. I'm also going to cut it down some along the top edge. The way he's got this is there's not a lot of distance between here and here. So when I bring the handle, even if it's straight across, the issue is there's not going to be a lot of aluminum. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit just to thicken up the aluminum on the top and see if we can get him a nice looking handle. So let me show you on the bench what it really looks like. All right, so here it is. You can see the shape a little bit better with the yellow background. And here's the grip I put on it. As I mentioned, the grip is a split part mold. I've created a channel for the blade to sit in, like so. It's pretty good except for right here. Let's see if you can see that there. Right, I don't know, I can't tell. Like that. You can see how it bulges right here. So we're gonna grind that down. I've just in the last 15 seconds decided I'm gonna grind it down so that it fits nicely in here. Then I'll go ahead and lay it out in the box. I probably won't talk during that time, and I'll do a voiceover maybe in a couple of days when I can actually speak. I probably should have taken you along for the ride on that, but I just took an angle grinder and cut away that bulge. It's still not perfect, doesn't fit in there perfectly, but it doesn't really have to. And the other thing that we talked about doing is we wanted to see how the colors ran through here, because I'm going to pour molten aluminum all over this, the shank of the blade, and or the hilt. I can't remember what this is called now, shank. Anyway, we're going to pour molten aluminum all over that. What's going to happen to the temper of the metal up here is the big question we have. And so I went ahead and just polished it up with 120 grit flat disc and knocked it off so we can hopefully see how the colors run. I expect it's going to go blue all the way up, but who knows. It'll be an interesting test to see. He wanted me to cut a couple of grooves in. You can see 3 grooves here because he was afraid that the grip would slip off. I told him that it's going to fuse to the metal, especially since it's not smooth. It's hammer marked in it. So, but I went ahead and did it just because, the customer's always right. So let's go ahead and get this rammed up. I'm going to shut up now because I'm losing my voice rapidly. All right, I lied. I came back right away. So I'm just getting my parts set up here in the flask. This is the pre-printed runner and gate that I'm using. You notice the gate will end up being at the top edge of the runner. It's not up in the cope like I normally do. But just getting it positioned so that it'll be right against the edge when I go ahead and ram it up. And when I want to pour my mold, I want the basin up against the edge. Yeah, this is exactly how fast I normally work. And I fill the box is pretty full. As you see how much it compresses when I ram it up. Always I go around the outside edges first, ram the middles. After that, I use a stick with a pointy end on it so that it will ram tightly. It won't create layers in the sand. If you ram with a flat surface every time, you end up with a kind of a stratified or stratification in your sand. Okay, so I'm going to put the knife in there now, and you'll see me here scribe around the blade part. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and cut out the sand where the blade is going to sit. Don't have to go very deep, only half the thickness of that metal, so pretty shallow cut, but I want it to be able to sit as close to the orientation it's going to get cast in as possible, and as flat as I can within the pattern. I'm not having to be real careful about the shape because this is just to hold it. I'm not casting this part, so we're not trying to get an exact shape of the blade here. And you'll see me here in a second. I'll put the blade in there, and I'll put some sand around it just to sort of create a dam between the actual open pour where I'm going to put it in and up where the blade is. I don't want the sand running up against the blade, and that's basically what I'm doing right there. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to keep this. I just want to keep the aluminum from running up into that part of the mold. And I've started doing this recently too. You saw the surge trap is printed on the runner, and then I've got a hole in the center of it that's a 1/4 inch. I can put a 1/4 inch dowel down through it, align the top half of the surge trap. It's just been very easy for me to get them in there and get them in the right place. You'll see here I've got a hole printed into the runner as well for my sprue, and so I can just stand the sprue up inside there. It's just been really nice to be able to do that, and I'm guaranteed that things are in the right places when I cast them up. And there's pins. I use pins in my two-part patterns a lot of time because I really don't want to just use them once. I want to be able to use them again and again, potentially. I don't know if I ever have, but that's what I want to do, and the pins allow me to take it apart. And I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here past all of this ramming. It looks just like the other half, except, it's got this stuff. And you're going to see me here striking off the top of my cope here. And I leave the vent and the sprue in simply because my sand is so bloomin' sticky, and if I don't, it fills the hole. It's a pain in the butt to get it out of there. So I just, at the risk of running into my sprue and jarring it sideways or something, I try to be really careful about that. I leave them in until everything's struck off and I've got the bulk of the sand out of the way, and now I can pull it out, and I'll have a clean hole. So you notice I cut my basin here. I'm going to cut it again right there. I didn't cut it deep enough. When we cut our basins, we want them to be at least 30 millimeters deep. When I'm going to go ahead and cut the ridges there, edge to edge from the sprue hole to the basin hole, to a nice straight transition. I'm going to show you at the end of the video too that we want that ridge about 10 millimeters off the bottom, not from the top. So you've got lots of metal above the ridge when you're filling the sprue. There you go. See my hands, how sticky that sand is. I'm going to try to get this thing out of here. Now I've got a magnet that I'm going to use to pull that blade out, and it just kind of leaps out of the mold when I get there. All right, everything comes out of here pretty good except for this last skin. It's stuck, so I had to tap it a few times with a spoon and just loosen it up just a hair. and pull it out, and you're going to see some breakaway right there and there, kind of in that curved section at the end, and then between the two, what would look like horns right now, some breakout, and we'll see that in the pour as well. I'm going to put the knife in here, but I'm going to take it right back out again because I forgot to cut out the sand between my gate and the part when they were two separate pieces, so there's just a little ridge of sand in there. I want to go ahead and clean that out right now. I'll put the blade back in, making sure it is down towards the bottom of the handle if I can, so I get as much space between the top of the shank and the aluminum as possible. Now look at me here. I'm playing with this mic. I don't even recognize the fact that it's right in front of the lens. Now, I mentioned just a second ago about that ridge being low. Now watch when I pour. Watch what happens with the sprue. You see me start to pour slow, but then I fill it up quickly, and it fills and stays full the entire pour. No air getting sucked down there. We're going to try to minimize the porosity as best as possible by keeping that sprue full. And then here's a shot everybody loves. Everybody loves seeing ingots being poured. I'm getting ready to open this thing up, and let me show you this. I got a praying mantis watching me cast. All right, let's open her up, see what we got. I don't know if I can cross anything out. Here we go. Well, it came out of there. I'm speechless. I can't talk, but that looks pretty darn good. And look at the color. It didn't run hardly at all. That's pretty cool. It didn't change the temper of this blade at all, really. I mean, all we got was a little bit. That is super. I've got a boatload to clean up, but pretty happy. Let me get it pulled out of here. All right, I got it back on that yellow lid just so we can see stuff. First thing to notice, again, this was an experiment. Jamie and I had talked about this to see how far the color would run. It's changed a little bit since I pulled it out. But you can see, you might be able to see that it went blue, brown, sort of straw. But that's as far up as the color ran. I mean, hardly any color at all up that blade. That's just that temper of the blade. He could temper this thing, and the only part that would be questionable would be back here. That's pretty cool, if you ask me. Pretty cool. I had a lot of blowout on the mold, and that's me, because I think it has something to do with 3 Diet Cokes for breakfast. I could be wrong, and when your hands are going like this, it's hard to pull things out good. But nice. Let me show you the basin here too, because this is important. I learned this on the bell I just did. I was doing these wrong. I'll tell you right now. I was cutting about a 30 millimeter deep basin and coming down 10 millimeters from the top. That was a problem for me because I had trouble keeping the sprue full. What I found out was that I needed to be cutting this really 10 millimeters from the bottom. So I've got like 20 millimeters of metal above my ridge. You saw when I filled, it came over the ridge, the sprue filled, and it stayed full the whole time. I don't even have to go back and look at the footage. I can tell you exactly that it did that. So cut your basins low, cut your ridges low, but close to the bottom of the basin. You want to have a little bit of one, right? You want that metal to settle a little bit before it rises up and flows over. But you want to keep the sprue full so it's not sucking air through. The other thing that I'll probably mention in the voiceover, there's my big old runner. Pretty close to the same cross-sectional area of the bottom of my sprue. It's actually a little bit big. Not a lot. And then I did a very big gate into the part. Actually, the gate has 3 times the surface area, or cross-sectional area, as the runner. So the idea was it would fill, hit the surge, surge filter, surge trap, take the initial blast, come up. It would come in here because I've got 3 times the area, the velocity of the metal, not the volume of the metal, but the velocity of the metal, should be cut by 1/3, flows into the part, filled. Pretty darn happy with the way that filled. I'm not seeing anything that looks bad, like porosity wise. There's a couple little sand things, but it looks pretty solid. It looks pretty good. So let me get this cut off. I'm gonna hand finish this thing. I'm gonna take a file, clean up the edges, probably use the palm sander just to sand it, and maybe just in some hand sanding. Depending on how it looks, I may buff it out. I'll bring it back and show you the finished product. All right, there it is. I decided not to buff it. I did a 400 grit sand on it, and I think it came out pretty darn nice. I did have a shrinkage spot right there. As I said, I was thinking that might happen, but I was hoping. I cannot tell you how good this feels. For a test, just to see how far colors would run and see if I could do this, I'm pretty darn pleased. So there you go. Let me put you back on my face and we'll say goodbye. I still can't talk, but again, maybe that's a blessing for you. So I'm going to wrap it up. Just tell you, you have a great day. Awesome. Take care of yourselves.